Okay, so the Gemara now makes one last attempt to basically say that there's no issue of kilayim here. But at the conclusion, there will be kilayim. There will be an issue of kilayim. What's the last attempt? To say that basically kilayim only applies, maybe kilayim only applies if it's directly touching you. But if there's other garments, let's say I'm laying on top of 10 sheets, and the 10th sheet all the way on the bottom is made out of wool and linen, but the rest of them, the other 9, are all just cotton or just wool or just linen. So the question is that considered kilayim? Is that a problem? And at this point, the Gemara is going to ask, maybe that's the case here. Maybe the kohen is sleeping with his clothing under his head, and there's no kilayim. Why is there no kilayim? Because there's other things. In other words, only the avnate was kilayim. There's other parts of the bigdei kahuna that weren't kilayim. And if I don't know if it was just the avnate. I have to check that. But the point is that there were articles of the kohen's clothing that weren't just kilayim. So maybe those parts were under the kohen's head, and only the avnate was on. And the avnate was separated by other stuff. That's the Gemara's attempt. So maybe there were things that were separating between the kohen's head and the kilayim. Shimon said the name of Rabbi ben Levi. In the name of Yesi ben Shaul, in the name of the holy congregation of Yerushalayim. And even in a scenario that you have 10 sheets and the last sheet all the way on the bottom is kilayim, it's not allowed, even though you're not even touching it. Why? Because because the Chachamim established a rule. The rule is that you're not allowed to lay on top of kilayim, because like we said before, it's going to wrap around you. Once the Chachamim established that rule, we don't start differentiating. This is how it works with Takanas Chachamim. We don't start differentiating between certain scenarios where it's less likely to happen and where it's more likely to happen. That's not the way that the principles of the Chachamim work. The principles of the Chachamim are set in stone, and set in stone is that if it's under you, it's a problem. So if it's under you, it's a problem. Okay. So it had to be next to them. The Gemara says not necessarily. Maybe really the clothing was under their head. Not necessarily you have to say it was next to his head. And maybe really if it was under his head, maybe it's possible that you're allowed to benefit from it. Why was it under his head? How is it allowed to be under the kohen's head if there was an issue of kilayim? Because this whole discussion is regarding the bigdei kahuna that had no kilayim. They weren't made out of wool and linen. Rashi Amar bigdei kahuna kashtin damar Ravuna b'rei Yeshua hanamta gam t'dinei sharia. There's a separate rule, and this rule is that when kilayim, when clothing has to warm a person up. In order for clothing to be considered clothing, one of the factors that it has to warm a person up. If the texture of the clothing is so hard, it's like a rock almost. It's so hard that it doesn't provide any comfort to the person, any warmth. So the rule is that it doesn't fall under the principles and the rules of kilayim. So the clothing of the kohen were so hard, or the avnit was so hard, that it didn't have this issue of kilayim. Bigdei kahuna kashen. Well, it refers to the bigdei kahuna in general. They were very stiff. Okay. The conclusion right now is basically that you are not allowed to benefit from bigdei. Well, we established that you're not allowed to benefit from bigdei kahuna. And then we went into a whole long discussion about kilayim, and we thought that maybe kilayim, maybe it had to be next to the kohen's head because there was an issue of kilayim. And then we said that maybe it was under his head because there was no issue of kilayim, but that was kind of a side note, the side idea. At this point, we still established that a kohen's not allowed to derive personal benefit from his clothing. But here the Gemara is gonna flip, is gonna say, it's in parentheses, this next piece of Gemara, but this next piece of Gemara is going to suggest the exact opposite, that a kohen is allowed to benefit from his clothing, and it's going to bring proof for it. It's going to ask a question, it's going to slug up the question, and it's going to end off Shma Mina, the kohen is allowed to benefit from his clothing, derive personal benefit from his clothing. Tashma, Bigdei Kahuna Yitzi Behen LeMedina Asur. It says, when a kohen wears his clothing out to the city, not allowed. Uba Mikdash, but for a kohen to wear his clothing within the Beis HaMikdash itself. And now it says clearly, Bein b'sha'as aveda, this is a brisa. Bein b'sha'as aveda, bein shlei b'sha'as aveda mutter. Whether it's at the time that he's serving in the Beis HaMikdash, or whether it's at the time that he's not serving in the Beis HaMikdash, it's completely okay. Why? Brisa says it literally, clearly, word for word. Mipnei shabigdei kohuna nitnu lihanas ben, because you're allowed to benefit from them. Shema mina. Okay. I made a mistake before. There's no question on this. It's straightforward from the Brisa that there's no issue. But the Gemara does have a different question on the Brisa. It said in the Brisa that you're not allowed to wear it in the city. That the kohen is not allowed to wear his clothing out in the city. And the question is that really true? It's going to bring a question. It's going to bring a story from a Brisa where Rabbi Shimon HaTzadik went out to greet Alexander of Macedonia, which is Alexander the Great. When Shimon HaTzadik went to greet him, he was not in the Beis HaMikdash. He went out to the city, and it says he was wearing Bigdei Kahuna. So the question is, are you allowed or are you not allowed? And the Gemara is going to have two answers. Either he dressed up like wearing Bigdei Kahuna, in other words, he wore things that were made out of the same materials of Bigdei Kahuna, and the other answer is that no. He was wearing Bigdei Kahuna itself, and generally this would not be allowed. But there's a concept, there's a principle called Eis Lasis Lashem Mefer Terasacha, which means that there are times that we are allowed to be Mefer Hashem's Torah. We're allowed to go not against, because it's within the rules of Torah, but there are times where because of a greater cause. For example, here where Shimon HaTzadik going out to greet Alexander the Great was going to save the Yidden. So in this case, the rule that generally applied didn't apply in his case. Let's see it inside. Medina law, you can't wear the clothing in the city. V'hatanya b'chaf aleph ba, in the 21st of I believe it's Teves. Yom Har Grizim is the day that's called Har Grizim, and this is a day that was established, the Loila Mispad, that you were not allowed to eulogize because it was a very holy day. Why was it a holy day, a special day, a festive day? Because this was a day that Shimon HaTzadik met Alexander of Macedonia, and it says, "K'di b'yoma perek balei chav gimel." So the first answer is that that they were fit to be Bigdei Kahuna, but they were not actually Bigdei Kahuna. Okay, now the last piece of Gemara. It says in the Mishnah, if a kohen were to see seminal discharge while he's serving in the Beis HaMikdash, he would go under the tunnels, the mechilais, which those mechilais would take him outside of Har HaBayis. And the Gemara says, this idea, this concept supports Rabbi Yechanan. The Amar Rabbi Yechanan says, that those tunnels were never sanctified in the same regard that the Har HaBayis itself was sanctified. So Har HaBayis was not able to be contaminated in this sense, and therefore he had to leave. But he had to leave through this escape route, which was the mechilais, which were not sanctified. That's the Rabbi Yechanan's rule, and this halacha supports Rabbi Yechanan. Ubal keri mishtaleach chutz l'shnei machanes. And the end of Rabbi Yechanan's statement is that when a bal keri, when someone becomes a bal keri, he's sent out from both of the machanes. All right. Thank you, and Zaydi's neshama should have an aliyah. Love you all very dearly.